one of the, maybe going back, Shannon, a little bit to a conversation we had earlier around, discovery of fintechs. I think this is an important part of the conversation, and you were talking about a bit of the challenge of the scale of how you even find fintechs that you want to partner with. Can you talk to us a little about what that looks like from your end?
It was a lot easier. I think I was chatting to the gents about this before. It was a lot easier 5-6 years ago in my old role, because you went on Google, there was 10 or 20 companies that did it. You pulled them all in, you did a demo day, and you found one straight away. Now there's thousands of companies that will do the same thing, or say they can do the same thing. And so it's really quite challenging, and because of that, we don't have the time to scan all that. So that's where a lot of our partners come into play. We work with a lot of VC firms, funds, accelerators. Often that's our first port of call. If I have a challenge, I need to solve a problem, I'll go out to those guys first, guys and girls. Have you got anyone in your portfolio you recommend? We'll scan through those first. And I think it's really important from the startup's perspective. Don't promise you can do something that you can't. And don't try and be everything to everyone. I think that's the biggest, unless you're a Workday or a giant, behemoth, make sure you really know what your USP is. Make sure you can understand how you sell that, and make sure you can deliver on that value. At the end of the day, we want you to succeed. If you come to us and tell us you can solve this problem, we want to work with you to solve that problem. But that can be the challenge often as well. You find, you get recommended someone, you have conversations, you get 3 or 4 conversations deep, and you realize it's not actually the right technology, or they can't actually solve the problem. So I think it's the sheer scale of the industry now becomes quite challenging. And so for our own sake, sometimes we need to retract a little bit and work with key partners. I'm giving them a plug here, so. But it's true.
It's a good setup.
And they're trusted advisors for us as well.
Absolutely. So, and again, maybe coming back to that investor perspective, because you guys literally find fintechs for a living, so you've probably done a little bit of this as well. Could you tell us kind of what your approach is to finding fintechs that you would like to partner with?
Yeah, happy to start. We actually have a very, part of what we've developed over 20 years is our proprietary sourcing process, which is, I guess, ultimately a selection process, but we're now talking to thousands of companies on the front end every year. I think it's approaching 20,000, and it scales every single year. We have associates that are reaching out. They're very thematically driven. We have multiple themes within banking technology. We have multiple themes within insurance technology. We have our own proprietary database where we're housing all of our data. We also have about a dozen plus external data providers that are providing data in on all these different private companies. This data is hard to find. We have to splice it together, and then we actually even have some of our own ways to web crawl and find very difficult, technically available data, but hard to find and hard to organize, and we put that all in our database, which is separate, but communicates with our CRM. So it's very data-driven, it's very technology-driven, and then it's very thesis-driven over the top in terms of like where we're then pointing like our basically our human bandwidth, which starts with associates, but then the very interesting companies very quickly boil up to a partner who hopefully has had many years of success investing behind a certain sector. So we, if we're not out there actually finding those companies on our own, shame on us. Now, what is incredibly helpful is those relationships with those financial institutions. They help drive insights on specific companies, but they do help us just plot out the entire space in terms of which subsectors we think could be interesting in terms of innovation and growth, then which companies are bubbling up to the top in terms of the companies they believe are the winners. So it's also informed by that global partner network as well. So a lot goes into that, but I would say, sitting back and expecting like those opportunities to come to you, I think that's like the old school of investing. I think it's long gone. And if you're not proactive in the way that you're reaching out and finding those companies, you're not going to be successful. So.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And I think we're biased because we spend all our time in this sector. So it enables us to do that and be super focused. And I'd echo like spending a lot of time with like the partnerships teams at banks and getting deep in like what are their problems, and then we use that to go kind of be very focused on finding companies that can solve that problem. And I think a lot of like we do a lot of the same stuff you guys are talking about, but I think one other way that we really kind of index on sourcing is following the people. Like, where are really top operators from banks, other kind of tech companies going? And if you follow the people, you often follow a lot of the good companies, because companies are just an organization of people. And I think particularly in this sector where like that institutional knowledge and that experience of working with banks or FIs is so important, that you can follow execs as they move, as well as like who's leaving certain banks or innovation groups and starting companies, or where's the talent going is something that we index pretty heavily on.